Before we are quick to point fingers at Philip and even some of these other disciples that we've talked about, and we question his questions and his thoughts, we might need to look into the mirror ourselves. If we are honest, we too are often slow to understand, trust, and see beyond our immediate circumstances. We may have seen Jesus do marvelous things in our lives or maybe in the lives of others, but we still lack the faith to conquer our current circumstances.
Welcome back to the podcast series 12. I'm your host, Brother Chris, and this is episode 9. We've come to the disciple named Philip. We mentioned Philip's name in the previous episode of Nathanael, suggesting that the two were close friends based on what we read in Scripture. As with the other 12 disciples, Philip is listed in the Synoptic Gospels, Acts, and John. Something worth mentioning, though, is that Philip is always fifth in line when it comes to the list of the disciples in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Acts. I am joined now with Brother Steadman.
So, most of what we know about the person Philip comes from the book of John. In fact, Philip is mentioned as an important character in John chapter 6, chapter 12, and also chapter 14.
I know with some other disciples, we have their callings recorded in the Bible. Do we find in Scripture the call on Philip's life?
We do. It's found in John chapter 1, verse 43, and it says this: "The next day, he, Jesus, purposed to go into Galilee, and he found Philip. And Jesus said to him, 'Follow me.'" Philip's call was a personal call. As we previously discussed with Nathanael, it is safe to assume that Philip and Nathanael were students of the Old Testament. When Jesus approaches Philip and says, "Follow me," it had a profound impact on Philip's life. Concerning the call of Philip, John MacArthur suggests that in his book, The 12 Ordinary Men, that this is the first time that we read that Jesus himself actually sought and found one of the disciples. This is not to say that he didn't sovereignly seek and call the rest, but in the description of how they first encountered Christ, this language is unique to the call of Philip. He is the first one whom Jesus physically sought out, and the first one to whom Jesus actually said, "Follow me." Warren Wiersbe says that John and Andrew were saved through a preacher, John the Baptist. Peter found Christ because of Andrew's personal work, and Philip was called by Christ personally, and Nathanael found Christ through the word and Philip's testimony. God uses different people and circumstances to bring people to his Son. He is a God of infinite variety.
It sounds like the call of Philip was something very special and unique. But the call on all the disciples' lives is unique in their own way as well. The call that Jesus places on your life is unique to you, and likewise, the call that Jesus places on my life is unique to me.
I want to look at one of the conversations that Jesus has with Philip in the book of John. We find it in John chapter 6, verses 5 and 7. And it says, "Therefore Jesus, lifting up his eyes, seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, 'Where are we to buy bread so that these may eat?' This he was saying to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to receive a little." This is one of the most prominent miracles of Jesus in the Scriptures, the feeding of the 5,000. At the beginning of this recorded event in John's account, we see Jesus approach Philip about finding enough food to feed everyone. Scripture's clear that Jesus questioned Philip in order to test him. It is clear that Philip had already been thinking these things through his head because he answered Jesus right away. He told Jesus that they would not be enough to buy bread for the entire crowd. And John MacArthur says that, and when Jesus tested Philip's faith, he responded with open unbelief. It can't be done. The Bible Knowledge Commentary adds that the answer to Jesus' question was that it was impossible, humanly speaking, for thousands of people to get bread late in the day from the little neighboring villages. Philip had seen Jesus turn water into wine and countless other miracles up to this point. But in this moment, looking at the crowd, he felt overwhelmed. He lacked the faith to believe they could all be fed. And this was a lesson that Jesus was preparing to teach Philip. The impossible was about to become possible.
Even today, we are tested at different moments in our lives to strengthen our faith in God. All tests and trials we endure, they aim to refine us because they have a purpose to do so. Hebrews 4:11 speaks to this, saying, "All discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful, but sorrowful. Yet to those who have been trained by it, afterwards it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness." This word discipline is in that verse also means training. So James 1:2-4 reads, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing."
There's another area in the book of John where Philip plays a significant role. And that's when some Greeks approach him about seeing Jesus. We see it in John chapter 12, verses 20-26, and I'll read it. It says, "Now there were some Greeks among those who were going up to worship at the feast. These then came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and began to ask him, saying, 'Sir, we wish to see Jesus.' Philip came and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip came and told Jesus, and Jesus answered them, saying, 'The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. He who loves his life loses it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it to life eternal. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there my servant will also be. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him.'" Almost all Bible scholars suggest that the Greeks approached Philip because of his Greek name. The question is, why didn't Philip just take them to Jesus? Why did he include Andrew? Is that a question even worth asking and thinking about? And their answer to that is, I'm not sure. It just stood out to me that Philip came and told Andrew. This may reveal that Philip was a rule follower and may not have been aware of how to treat this situation. It may reveal that Philip knew that Andrew brought everyone to Jesus, and so he involved Andrew in this circumstance. No one really knows. One thing I found while studying this passage of Scripture concerns the Greeks seeking Jesus is this, and this comes from the Bible Knowledge Commentary, and it says that the mention of Greeks is significant. They were the wanderers of the ancient world and the seekers of truth. These Greeks were probably God-fearers who attended Jewish synagogues and feasts. Their coming was symbolic of the coming of the Gentiles to worship God through Christ.
I'm sure there is more to be studied concerning the meaning of this passage of Scripture, but concerning the study of Philip, he played a significant role in allowing these Greek worshipers to approach and meet Jesus. I am sure he did not even recognize that at the time.
He probably didn't, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that and the role that Philip played in bringing that message to other people. There's a final area in the Scripture that we will review concerning Philip, and it takes place in the upper room. We've read about this scenario a couple of times with some of the other episodes. But when it comes to this particular disciple, Philip, he comes into play as Jesus is preparing for his death and trying to comfort and prepare his disciples as well. There's a little dialogue. It's found in John chapter 14, verses 7-14, and it says that, "If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you know me and have seen me." Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us." Jesus said to him, "Have I been so long with you, and yet you have not come to know me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak of my own initiative, but the Father abiding in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Otherwise, believe because of the works themselves. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also, and greater works than these he will do, because I go to the Father. Whatever you ask in my name, that will I do, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it. This is another moment where Philip struggled. Maybe he quite didn't understand Jesus. Maybe he required something more to see the Father. Either way, Jesus makes it clear to the disciples, the one who has spent time with him has seen the Father. Dr. Elmer Towns, in his commentary on John, says that since Christ was so conscious of his identity with his Father, he expressed surprise when the disciples failed to recognize it by now. Philip demonstrated his lack of understanding when he asked for an experience inferior to those he had experienced daily in his contacts with God incarnate. John MacArthur says that Philip, like the other disciples, was a man of limited ability. He was a man of weak faith. He was a man of imperfect understanding, and so he was unable to grasp the big picture of Christ's divine power, person, and grace. He was slow to understand, slow to trust, and slow to see beyond the immediate circumstances. He still wanted more proof. I think that we learned that with Thomas as well. Before we are quick to point fingers at Philip and even some of these other disciples that we've talked about, and we question his questions and his thoughts, we might need to look into the mirror ourselves. If we are honest, we too are often slow to understand, trust, and see beyond our immediate circumstances. We may have seen Jesus do marvelous things in our lives or maybe in the lives of others, but we still lack the faith to conquer our current circumstances.
No doubt, Philip wasn't perfect, just like the other disciples that we've noted so far, and just like me, and just like you. But Jesus still called him and used him for a reason. He has called you and me for a reason and a purpose. So we invite you to do your best to follow him in all that we do in this life and allow him to guide us and grow our faith, even when it hurts or seems impossible. I know that passage from Hebrews has been a pivotal verse for me in my walk, that the discipline doesn't always seem fun at first, but we know that therein lies the development of our faith as God works in us through that discipline for our benefit and for his glory. And we want to invite you back to our next episode as we get into some major players here among the disciples. We'll be digging into the life of John in our next episode, and we hope you'll be around to hear all about that. We'll see you next time.